Hi everyone, Anthony Buntano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Bad Bunny record, X100 Pre. This is the debut full-length album of rising Latin trap star Bad Bunny, a Puerto Rican singer and rapper who's exploded in popularity with the recent rise of trap-flavored pop rap geared toward Spanish-speaking audiences. The sub-bass and the rattling hi-hats and the crispy snares and the triplet flows, they made it to Latin America, and now artists like Bad Bunny are essentially fusing those sounds with Latin pop and reggaeton and R&B, among other things. And it creates a somewhat refreshing sound, though I think Bad Bunny sticks closely enough to the current-day trap blueprint so that his tracks could be played pretty seamlessly in a Spotify playlist with Drake on it. And I mean, Drake is in fact on this record, on the closing cut, Mia. A single I didn't really care for when it first dropped, a single that I still don't really like now that it's in the context of the record either. It's a very spacey and forgettable and vanilla track that I think speaks to the laziness that Drake sort of oozes on a lot of his new material. Not to single my dislike of this one track out though, because there were other reasons I wasn't all that excited to hear this LP, namely Bad Bunny's singing voice. Over the past couple of years, as this dude has successfully transitioned from grocery store employee to Latin trap superstar, I've heard a handful of pretty high-profile features from him. With Will Smith and J-Lo and Cardi B, he's been plastered all over the front of Apple Music for days and days and days at a time. And whether it's a feature or one of his many successful singles, Bad Bunny consistently comes through with this bellowing, throaty voice. It's like the vocal equivalent to a bull just charging through a china shop. And deeper into this record, there are more spots where Bad Bunny exhibits odder vocal quirks. Like, for one, he, most likely because of his intense singing style, will usually start a lot of lines off with him just gasping for air. It sounds like repeatedly through his own album he's being waterboarded on mic, or like someone's dunking his head into a tank and then he's coming up for air. All of this adds together into something that's very loud, it's very ear-grabbing, but I can't really say that I enjoy it. For sure, Bad Bunny sounds unlike a lot of other singers and vocalists out there in the current pop trap field, but I'm just left wondering whether or not he has anything else to offer listeners who might have kind of gotten their attention grabbed by him on a feature here and there, or like a random single. And to his credit, on this album, he does make an attempt to vary up his sound a little bit, try some different things. I applaud him for not putting out a totally one-dimensional album, trying out various sounds and styles within the trap genre while also throwing a few unexpected surprises in there too. And most of this variety comes through on the production end of things. The beats really do tend to steal the show, because they're all pretty infectious and detailed and entrancing, like the heavy trap percussion, which backs up very well the trippy effects and the plucky chords and finishing violins on the opening cut, or on Tenemos que Hablar, which feels like a fusion between trap and pop rock. I mean, I can't say I think it sounds all that good as a tune or as a meld of styles, but it's certainly unique. The song Otra Noche in Miami has a throwback 80s synthwave quality to it. Feels like I'm spending a night in Grand Theft Auto's Vice City, where I'm just like doing tons of coke and strippers, and there's a nice gauzy vaporwave aesthetic to it. Then there's also the warped and sad pianos that warp psychedelically into a wash of auto-tune vocals on the track Quien Tu Eres, which in a lot of ways sounds exactly like something Travis Scott would do on a record, which is not the only spot on this album where I hear a pretty bold Travis Scott influence. Without a doubt, all of these production bells and whistles are a nice touch. They add a lot of flavor and character to the record. They definitely play a huge factor in this album's enjoyability, but for the most part, it is kind of a distraction from Bad Bunny's vocal shortcomings. Even with him attempting at going into a falsetto range and riffing on some more expressive vocal lines on like Si Estuviésemos Juntos, or even some low-key gospel-ish vocals on the track CARO. Meanwhile, we have other cuts on this record where the songwriting runs thin, the beats feel a little generic, and even Bad Bunny's voice, he's kind of painted himself into a corner because he has nothing really left to present us. Whether it be on Ser Bichote or Estamos Bien, probably the most vapid cut on the entire record, featuring this really awkward flow that really doesn't invite the listener to bob their head or anything. Also, these squeaky, undefined synth melodies that get lost in this wash of reverb. It sounds like a wintry nightmare. There are maybe a few spots on this thing where Bad Bunny comes through the vocal melody that's uniquely good, transcends the genre he's in transcends the language barrier. But for the most part, the vocals on this thing are either increasingly getting obnoxious or they are falling into the background because the tone and the timbre is so same across the entire record that it just feels like wallpaper after a while. The vocal performances from one track to the next, they come off very, very samey. The beats consistently steal the show, as I said earlier, and what's crazy about that is that the beats aren't even that amazing. Sure, many of them sound pretty expensive and kind of refined, but if you've been paying attention to a lot of the biggest mainstream rap records over the past couple of years, there's nothing really on this album that's all that cutting edge or refreshing. Is anything on this album as experimental or as adventurous as what you might hear on JPEG Mafia's Veteran? Not really. Is anything on this record as luscious, colorful, surreal, and cutting edge as you might hear on Travis Scott's Astroworld? No. Neither is Bad Bunny trying to say anything all that profound on a lot of these cuts either. I mean, given that I'm not a native Spanish speaker, maybe there are some elements of wordplay here that I'm not privy to. Maybe some of the songs on this thing where he's kind of in his feels over a failed relationship, just some love on the rocks, might speak to other people more than me. But lyrically, this record is not really looking to blow your mind or anything like that, which is something I've been happy to overlook in the past with other records if they've presented some great instrumentals or some good vocal performances or a unique personality or something, but I just don't really feel like this record has that at its disposal. I think the closest this record came to bordering on something super interesting is the song CUANDO PERRIABAS, which I think is the only time I've heard reggaeton and trap and glitch hop melded together. Maybe unintentionally, but I don't know, the squawky synthesizers and some of the weird noisy effects, it's all intentionally cacophonous, it seems like. I don't think how noisy and freaky this song sounds is an accident or anything. And it's oddly satisfying despite how grating it is. La Romana is also one of the more enjoyably raw cuts on this thing, especially after a very sharp beat switch in the second half, and a super grimy feature from El Alfa. Overall, though, this new Bad Bunny, it's a kind of spotty and slightly bloated album with a pretty much even mix of highs and lows. And while there are some moments of genius on this record where I think Bad Bunny vocally does pretty well, the instrumental is pretty awesome, for the most part the cuts on this record feel like Bad Bunny's just executing a random shotgun blast of tracks where he's just trying a little bit of everything. Some of it works out, some of it doesn't. A lot of cuts on here where he's wearing his influence very clearly on his sleeve and he's just trying to hop into a lane where another popular rapper already is to kind of just ride on those coattails. And he's not really putting that deep of a spin on the sound that he's trying to copy. Meanwhile, he's trying to string a lot of this project together by delivering a lot of these very lovesick lyrics. It's pretty good in spots, but I think that's the most complimentary thing I can say about it, as much of the record is really inconsistent, while also being too consistent. I mean, vocally speaking, I would love to hear Bad Bunny switch it up a little bit more. Meanwhile, there are instrumentals and tunes on this thing that just feel like total duds. Because Bad Bunny can certainly hold a pitch, but I feel like there are a lot of spots on this thing vocally where it's almost like he just hits autopilot mode and just kind of delivers his song in the same timbre that he does every other track that he's on. I'm feeling a decent to strong 5 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Bad Bunny, forever.